Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Sonnet XVIII by William Shakespeare. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day is obviously a sonnet, and it's predominantly about, its main theme is about its power to defy time, to go against time, and to last forever, which carries on the beauty and the love for this person that it's written about throughout the generations. Now, just to say as we start, obviously, it's widely accepted now that the person, the object of the speaker's affections, is a young man, probably. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a homosexual or homoerotic poem by any means, but I will be referring to the person who's being compared to the summer's day as being a man for these reasons, and I'll explain them as we go through. Now, as I say, it's a sonnet. We know that because there's 14 lines. It's got an A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, G, G rhyme scheme running through it, which is what we know is the English sonnet. It's iambic pentameter. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Unstressed, stressed, unstressed, stressed, and so on. We can see here there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 feet of iamb, meaning that it's therefore iambic pentameter. And I'll write down the page because I don't have enough room. Iambic pentameter. So the way therefore I can safely say that it's a sonnet, it's about love, and it has figurative language. Now, although it's written in one stanza, essentially, of 14 lines, what I've done is I've split it into 3 quatrains, so 3 lines of 4, and then the final slide on this is the rhyming couplet of GG. But just remember that the poem is all together as one. It is 14 continuous lines, not 4 stanza. It is 14 continuous lines just in the one stanza. So the sonnet starts with the very famous immortal line, "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?" And then compares the lover to the other person to "Thou art more lovely and more temperate." It's comparing the young man to a summer's day and saying that he is more lovely and milder. He's calmer, he's not as rough. It goes on to tell us that rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. So it tells us that unlike a summer's day, he's not as hot, he's not as cloudy, as we go on to find out. This person is more lovely and milder, he's calmer. It takes us through 2 seasons there and tells us that rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, really at the end of spring, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Remembering that lease means that you rent something, so it's simply saying that the period of summer is far too short. It's over before it starts, really. And he's comparing this man, this other person, to a summer's day. And he's saying that while summer is only temporal, it doesn't last forever, this person's beauty does. It goes on to tell us that sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines. Now, the eye of heaven here, eye of heaven, the denotation of the eye of heaven is the sun. It's meaning literally the sun, because we're told that it shines, it's up in the sky, so the eye of heaven is the denotation of that is the sun. But the connotation of that, what it could suggest, can be quite a few things. It can certainly suggest, if you're reading it in a religious kind of reading, then it can certainly suggest God or some kind of religious kind of figure shining too hot, sometime too hot. So if you're reading it allegorically as being heaven or God, then if it shines too hot, then what does that suggest to you about the speaker's idea or concepts or what he thinks about God? And it goes on to tell us, and often is his gold complexion dimmed. Now, the denotation, quite literally what's happening is often because of the fact that clouds will blow in front of the sun, it says that his gold complexion dimmed. But again, if you're reading it as a man that is being addressed, his gold complexion dimmed, it's talking about the man, the other person, the person that he's comparing to the summer's day. You could certainly read it saying that obviously not all the time some things aren't quite as good as they seem. Perhaps sometimes there are down times, there's down periods within it, and that's why the complexion's dimming. You can read it in quite a variety of different ways. It goes on to tell us that even though the sun and the clouds can dim summer, can dim the sunshine and make summer not as beautiful, and every fair from fair sometimes declines, which sounds really nice when it's read out. It's obviously there meaning that it's the idea that everything kind of comes to an end, even beautiful things, fair, even beauty sometimes declines. At some point it will decline, it will come to an end. Just like the beauty of summer when all the animals are out, the grass is a lush green, there's blue clouds in the sky, and it's hot, everything like that. That obviously ends when it gives way to autumn. And it's saying here, by chance, or nature's changing course untrimmed. Nature's changing course, the denotation being the change of the seasons. But again, if you're reading this with a religious or a homosexual reading of it, you could certainly read that in a lot of different ways, a changing course. It's going on a different way. It suggests, obviously, if you're saying that it's a man that is being addressed to, the idea of the changing course certainly gives the idea that it's nature, so it's natural, but it's a changing course. It's not the normal course that it would normally take. And that in itself has quite a lot of different connotations and different meanings to what it gives us and what it means to us. The speaker now moves on to not just compare his love to summer, as he has in the previous 2 quatrains, the last 8 lines. In these 4 lines, he actually, the speaker's love actually metamorphosizes. He completely changes. He becomes summer, and his beauty becomes summer. It tells us, but your eternal summer shall not fade. The idea of summer being beautiful, of being the time when obviously life is at its fullest, when it's at its most beautiful, its most lush, its most healthy. It's saying that kind of period is going to last forever. It's your eternal summer. You will, because you're as beautiful as summer, you are summer. It will last forever. Your beauty will last forever. It shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest. And what that means is that you won't lose possession. You won't lose the beauty that you have. You won't have the beauty that you possess. That's what it's saying. Your eternal summer shall not fade. As your beauty is summer, it will never fade, and you'll never lose the possession of your beauty, of the beauty that you own. And it goes on and repeats the word nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade. It says that not even death, something that happens to all of us, all animals, all nature, dies. If you think about summer going into winter, it dies. All the nature, or a lot of the nature, a lot of the plants, trees and everything lose their leaves, and all the life to an extent dies. This will not happen to his lover's beauty, or his person that he's addressing it to his beauty. It will never happen. Death will not brag, death will not boast that you walk in his shade, in his death, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. Now this is an interesting metaphor. It's what we call a grafting metaphor. When you're gardening, if you use a grafting technique, it's when you join parts from 2 plants with bits of rope or cords so they grow together as one. Okay, so a grafting metaphor is 2 different things, 2 different ideas being put together to create one. So therefore, in these lines here, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. It's quite difficult, but it means when in these eternal lines, because this poem will last forever, and it's grafting that metaphor, that idea, on with the idea that as time you will grow, you will get older. It's grafting the 2 ideas. The beloved becomes immortal. The beloved in the summer lasts forever, and it's instantly linked to time. It's the idea of the immortality of living forever is linked with the times in his eternal lines. So the lines, because they will last forever, therefore the beauty will last forever as well. And in the final rhyming couplet, we can know it's a rhyming couplet because it's G, G, C and D. And it's in this final rhyming couplet that the speaker really just explains that as long as men can breathe, as long as humans are alive, our eyes can see, so as long as eyes on people are able to see things, so long as lives this, because they'll be able to see, they're living and they're able to see the poem, and this gives life to thee. The idea that it gives life, it makes the memory, it makes the beauty of the person immortal and makes it last forever. And that in itself is a really interesting idea. It's gone from the first two quatrains, the first 8 lines, a quatrain obviously being 4 lines, the first 8 lines, the first quatrain, comparing the person's love to summer, goes on to the next quatrain to actually saying that the love is summer. It's really metamorphosizing it. And the final 2 lines, the final rhyming couplet, the GG, tells us that as long as this poem is in existence, as long as people are able to read this poem, the memory and the love and the beauty of the person it's written about shall last forever. Now, just interestingly, Sonnet 18 is the first poem in the whole of the sonnets not to explicitly encourage the young man to have children. Now, the first 17 sonnets can be seen almost as a procreation sequence. And they end with Sonnet 18, with the end of Sonnet 17 ends with the idea, the speaker's realization that a young man might not need to preserve his beauty. He could also live, as the speaker writes right at the end of 17, in my rhyme. It then directly goes on to Sonnet 18 and tells us that this first, which is basically the speaker's first rhyme, it's the first attempt that the speaker has not to just encourage him to procreate, to preserve his beauty, but it's the first time he says that actually you don't have to do that. This is my attempt to preserve the young man's beauty for all time. The beloved eternal summer shall not fade, precisely because it's embodied in the sonnet, because the sonnet essentially is the eternal summer. So long as men can breathe, our eyes can see, the speaker writes in the final couplet, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. And that's very important, those last 2 lines, because in the first 17 sonnets, Shakespeare's talked about procreation, having babies is the best way to pass on your beauty. But now the speaker's saying, actually, I can preserve your beauty. You don't have to actually go and obviously have sex with a woman to create a baby. I can preserve it in these lines. So if you're reading it as a homosexual poem, that really makes it interesting. It's almost having an argument through the 158 different sonnets there are. It's almost having an argument and saying, actually, you don't need a woman, or you don't need to procreate. I can preserve your beauty forever through these lines, through this poem. As I say, there's lots of different readings and analysis that you've done in class, and you're able to do by yourselves, and different ways to read this. As always, if you're going off on your own analysis, you must make sure that you carefully read it and you quote it and you're using lots of evidence to back it up. Don't have too many mad different ideas that are just a big jumble, a big mess, and don't have any clear line of thought through it. To get an A in your IGCSE exams, you really need to have a clear line of thought running right through it. Don't say within the same essay that on one hand it's addressed to a woman, and then it might actually be a gay poem, it might be addressed to a man, so therefore the speaker might be gay, but actually it's just really saying how beautiful summer is. Don't go through all these different lines of thought. Have a really clear picture and use lots of evidence to back it up. Have a clear line of thought, have a clear spine, if you like, running right through your essays.